Okay, here's a true story about a little owl. The third time that little owl flew ahead of me and waited, I started to wonder if it was trying to tell me something, because once is an owl, but twice is interesting, but three times makes you pay attention. It was almost dusk, and I was walking alone through the woods, as I did every day, praying and meditating, and I noticed this owl kept bothering me, flying ahead of me. It would fly down the path and wait on a branch until I caught up, and then it would fly a little further. And it was making the cutest little clucking noises. Not almost barking, chattering. Chuck, chuck, chuck. And then it would hop on the branch, and it would turn around, and it would shake its tail feathers at me. And then it would fly further down the path, and I would follow. But what I didn't remember at the time was I had stuck a feather in my hair. I'd seen it as soon as I stepped off of the ATV I was on, and it was beautiful, so I picked it up. I didn't want to put it in my pocket and bend it, and I wasn't going to stick it in my bra and get all sweaty, so I stuck it in my ponytail like this, like a feather in my hat, and then I forgot about it. That part is important, because while I'm standing there wondering why this little owl keeps turning around and shaking its backside at me, I'm apparently walking through the woods with the feathers sticking out of my head, and I didn't remember any of that. All I knew was that I had gone into the woods looking for quiet and found myself in a conversation with an owl. I'm calling back and forth across the path before I saw either one. One would call, the other would answer. I walked slowly toward the sound until I finally could make out the tiny shape on a branch up to my right. And I know it was now that it was an eastern screech owl, and at the time I just thought it was, what a cute little owl. It was perfectly made for those woods, brown against brown, branch against feathers. And by dusk, the little thing could almost disappear while looking directly at it. If it had wanted to hide from me, I never would have found it. But there it was, not hiding. That's the part I remember. It would hop, move along the branch, chatter, shake its feathers. I even managed to take a video of it moving through the trees, and I stood there for as long as it would allow me. There are moments when we ruin an experience by trying too quickly to possess it. We name it, we explain it, we post it, we picture it, we prove it. Sometimes the proper response to wonder is just to be quiet. So I was. Eventually, the other owl stopped calling. Sometimes the proper response to wonder is much simpler. Just be quiet. So I was. Eventually, the other owl stopped calling, and I never heard it again, but this one remained. Then it flew ahead of me, so I walked on. There it was again. And this time, it had landed near two great trees that I have always loved. I pray over those trees, and I know that sounds strange to some people, but I do. I ask that they be allowed to grow, and that nobody cuts them down, and that they become everything that they could possibly become here on earth. And there was my little owl sitting in one of those trees, chattering away, turning around, showing me its tail, and I started laughing. I followed it again and again. Now, after the third time, I was beginning to understand that whether this meant something or didn't mean anything, I was having an experience I wanted to be fully present for. So, eventually, the little owl turned around one final time and flew away. And at this time, I was at the end of my path as well. So, the dogs had caught up with me. They knew I had been talking to nature long enough, and so they showed up and scared everything away. I thanked the owl, I thanked God, and I went home. And when I walked in my home, I passed by a mirror, and I realized I had the feather stuck in my ponytail. So I pulled it out, and suddenly I saw that owl again in my mind, turning around, showing me its tail again and again and again. And I looked at the feather and started laughing. Because what this was trying to tell me was, had I just walked through the woods wearing that poor little creature's feather, and he was trying to get my attention? Excuse me, ma'am, you're wearing something of mine. I had no idea, and I still don't. But I am perfectly comfortable saying I don't know. Mystery does not become less beautiful simply because I refuse to lie about what I can or can't prove. But the feather created another problem because I wanted to keep it. Now, it wasn't some random feather I picked up in the woods. It had a story, and therefore, somewhere inside of myself, I had already begun thinking that it belonged to me. And that bothered me because at that point in my life, I had been studying abundance. Not abundance, we use the word where meaning acquiring money and possessions and, a hot spouse or whatever. I had been meditating on something almost the opposite of that, which is the true abundance, the kind that begins inside, the kind that doesn't grasp, that doesn't hoard, that doesn't need to drag everything beautiful home. Take what you need and leave the rest is the basic principle. You trust that there will be enough, and it's there in the teachings of Yeshua, Buddhism, across ancient wisdom traditions, all forms, are to release attachment. Don't mistake possession for fulfillment. And that's the way, the true way, with a capital W. But I really wanted that feather. So I thought, well, here's an opportunity to learn how to, about non-attachment. I wrestled with it, not because I thought I had committed some moral terrible offense by picking up a feather. It was something subtler. I had taken it without asking myself whether finding something gave me the right to possess it or not. It doesn't matter what it is. How much of human history can be contained inside one word, mine. It's mine because I found it. It's mine because I can take it. It's mine because I want it. And I began wondering whether abundance might require exactly the opposite instinct. Maybe abundance says beautiful and leaves it there. Around that same time, something else happened. I went to the wellness center where an old friend, Barry, had once worked. And Barry was known as a spiritual healer. They called him the witch doctor because of his gift for seeing people's chakras or energy centers and able to tell them where they were, lacking or out of alignment. So I went by to pick up some supplements, and I noticed Barry's paintings were set out, and there were owls. So Barry had spent his spare time painting owls. That's a coincidence? Maybe. The truth was, there I stood fresh from this peculiar incident with the owl, looking at paintings of owls in the home of a spiritual healer or in the workplace of it. I'm, again, not interested in forcing an answer. I was beginning to learn that when something strange and beautiful happens, you don't always have to dissect it. Sometimes you just simply notice. And that evening, I went back to the woods and I returned the feather. I stuck it on the tree around near where I found it on the path, and I took a picture of it, and which you'll see on the end of the video, and I thanked God for allowing me to find it. Thanked him for the experience and left it there. And I felt good. I felt like the owl knew I had returned it. So I walked away. The next day, I returned to the woods for my usual walk, and the feather was gone. I wasn't surprised. Something had taken it, the wind, another animal, maybe the owl. Whatever had happened, it wasn't on that tree anymore, and I didn't go looking for it. I'd given it back. I had released, opened my hands, and I missed it, but I went on walking. So I went down the well-familiar, well-beaten path. You could drive an ATV down it. There was nothing hidden on the path, and as I kept walking, I kept thinking about that feather, about letting go, about just being able to not have and still feel fulfilled. That's a conundrum I couldn't marry. I couldn't align. Strange and beautiful happens. You don't always have to dissect it. Sometimes you just simply notice. And that evening, I went back to the woods and I returned the feather. I stuck it on the tree around near where I found it on the path, and I took a picture of it, and which you'll see on the end of the video, and I thanked God for allowing me to find it. Thanked him for the experience and left it there. And I felt good. I felt like the owl knew I had returned it. So I walked away. The next day, I returned to the woods for my usual walk, and the feather was gone. I wasn't surprised. Something had taken it, the wind, another animal, maybe the owl. Whatever had happened, it wasn't on that tree anymore, and I didn't go looking for it. I'd given it back. I had released, opened my hands, And I missed it, but I went on walking. So I went down the well-familiar, well-beaten path. You could drive an ATV down it. There was nothing hidden on the path, and as I kept walking, I kept thinking about that feather, about letting go, about just being able to not have and still feel fulfilled. That's a conundrum I couldn't marry, I couldn't align. So I asked God aloud, to spirit, to source. I said, if you love something, you have to set it free. If it comes back to you, it is yours. If it doesn't, it never was. Is that true? Because I'd heard it my whole life. And I kept walking a few more steps and then suddenly just decided to go home. It was almost dark anyway. As I turned around, right there in front of me where I had just stepped was a small screech owl tail feather. Right behind me in the place I had just walked. I stopped because it hadn't been there before. And I just crossed that spot. It was a broad, clear path, and now there was a feather. Not the feather, the same feather that I returned. It was different, but this one was pretty special too. Another screech owl tail feather. And it was lying behind me in the place I just walked. Moments I just asked God a question. Now listen, I'm not going to tell you what you have to believe about that. I don't need to. I know what happened. I have the photograph of the first feather. I have the photograph of the second. And I have the video of the little screech owl hopping through the trees at dusk. You may call what happened coincidence. You may call it synchronicity. And some people call it God, angels. You might call it probability of doing something in the woods in Arkansas. But I know what it taught me because I kept the second feather. I still have it. And there is a difference between those two feathers that has nothing to do with their size. The first feather I saw and I took. The second one appeared only after I was willing to release the first. True abundance is not accumulation. It is trust. It's knowing there is enough without needing to possess all of it. It's taking what you need and leaving the rest. It's enjoying beauty without immediately having to possess it. And it's understanding that an open hand is what you need to receive. We keep telling ourselves lies. You're not good enough. That's a lie. You're ugly. That's a lie. You're fat. That's a lie. You can't do anything. That's also a lie. Lie, lie, lie. And underneath all those lies is perhaps the oldest one of all, that there isn't enough. There's not enough love. There's not enough money. There's not enough beauty. There's not enough time. There's not enough for everybody. Be scared. And maybe that's some of the heat we feel in this world. And I'm not talking about July heat. I'm talking about the grasping, the fear, the competition, the desperate accumulation of things we hope will finally make us feel whole. But Yeshua taught something radically different. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. That's a quote from the Bible, the Christian Bible. But listen, I'm not going to tell you what you have to believe about that. I don't need to. I know what happened. I have the photograph of the first feather, and which you'll see attached, and I have the photograph of the second. I have the video of the little owl hopping through the trees at dusk, chattering at me while I followed it. And I have the second feather. And you can call what happened coincidence, you can call it synchronicity, and you can call it God, source, you can call it a miracle, chance. You can call it the probability of doing something peculiar in Arkansas woods. And that's between you and the mystery. But I know what it taught me because I kept the second feather. I still have it. And there's a difference between those two feathers that has nothing to do with their size or structure. The first feather I saw and took. The second appeared only after I was willing to release the first with no expectations of getting it back. And suddenly all that studying I'd been doing about abundance wasn't philosophy anymore. It was lying there in the dirt. True abundance is not accumulation. It's trust. It's knowing there is enough without needing to possess all of it. It's a practice of taking what you need and leaving the rest. It's enjoying beauty without immediately needing to own beauty. It is understanding that an open hand may appear empty, but only an open hand can receive. And maybe that is what we've forgotten. We keep telling ourselves lies. You're not good enough. You're ugly. You're too large or too small. You're too short. You're too tall. You can't do that. Lie, lie, lie. And underneath all those lies is perhaps the oldest one of all, is one personal to me that I was raised with, was there isn't enough. There's never enough. There's not enough love. There's not enough money. There's not enough beauty. There's not enough time. There's not enough for everybody. So fear and competition become the only way. And maybe that is some of the heat that we feel in the world. Not merely the heat outside us, July in Arkansas, but the heat inside of us. That grasping, that fear, that competition. The desperate accumulation of things we hope will finally make us feel whole. But Yeshua, Jesus, taught something radically different. If you have ears to hear. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives within you. You don't have to manufacture that power. You don't have to accumulate enough things to earn it. And you just have to stop obstructing it. Start telling yourself the truth. And when you do, the scales begin coming off of your eyes. You begin seeing things that were always there. You begin hearing what all the noise prevented you from hearing. And you begin realizing that perhaps you were standing in abundance the entire time. I had walked into a forest overflowing with trees, birds, life, beauty, air, earth, sound, source, and somehow thought abundance was the one feather I could carry home. That's the part that makes me laugh now. I was standing in the middle of everything, worried about keeping something. So perhaps that little owl did have something to teach me. Perhaps it didn't. I will leave that question open. But I know this. The first feather taught me how tightly I could hold on, and the empty tree taught me how to let go. And the second feather taught me what abundance actually feels like. I still have that feather, like I said, and whenever I look at it, I don't think, look what I found. I think, look what happened when I opened my hand. It's a tiny miracle I keep with me. Thank you for listening.